Hey, Sean, any update on Brian Allen?
Yeah, so a couple updates. Brian Allen has a calf strain, pretty good one, so he'll be out the rest of the year. Same thing with Ben Skowronek. Both those guys got their calves pretty good. They'll be out the rest of the year. Same thing with Jake Gervais with his ankle sprain. Marquise Copeland making good progress. We'll see if he's able to go this week or not. John will still be most likely out this week with his neck. Traven Howard will take him a day at a time, and same thing week to week with Aaron as well on his ankle.
And going with the first two, Brian Allen and Ben Skowronek, how tough is it losing both of those guys for the year?
Yeah, it's tough, because those were guys, obviously Brian, being so instrumental on the interior parts of the line, the communication. Coleman does a nice job stepping in, but other guys, it has effect on the totality of the unit. So that's a challenge for sure, especially with the amount of moving parts we've had at the quarterback position. But it is what it is, and you continue to handle it accordingly. And then that's a tough loss for Ben because he's done a good job of getting a lot of opportunities to continue to grow and mature as a receiver and really a complete player on this team. And it'll be tough to miss those last 3 games for him.
Thank you, Sean.
You're welcome.
Jordan.
Hey, Sean, how's it going?
Good. How you doing?
Good, thanks. Just wondering, now that you guys have had a couple weeks of work and not only understanding Baker and how he operates, but also understanding the situation and the environment around him, do you feel that you're going to be able to get a good evaluation of him considering the environment? And then also, do you feel like you're going to be able to get a good evaluation of some of these younger players here over the next 3 games?
Yeah, I think so. I think it is challenging because there's so many more moving parts. It's one thing to say you're going to get a chance to evaluate a guy around what you hope to be more normal circumstances in another year relative to being surrounded by, everybody that you're kind of projecting to be able to play. It's one thing to plug 1, 2 guys in. It's another thing to have as many different moving parts as we've had, which is different than anything, even close to anything I've experienced. And I think a lot of people, but it does, I think, the game experience is always a valuable thing, Jordan, without a doubt. But to say that those other things aren't a factor and making it a little bit more challenging, that is a case as well.
And kind of a big picture question, as you kind of get into these last few games and then the offseason, obviously you have your core contracts, your core roster guys who are in place, and but in terms of the roster overall, the rest of the roster, is there any piece of it that isn't going to get an evaluation, or are you looking at, no stone goes unturned here?
Yeah, I mean, you really don't have a choice. I mean, you get to the point now where we really can't even put anybody else on IR relative to some of the situations. And, the guys that aren't on IR end up maxing out our ability to play, with the 48. So you're going to get a chance to evaluate everybody just based on the nature of the amount of injuries. And then after the season, we'll get a chance to kind of really unpack and do a deep dive in terms of everything that's all encompassing to the roster.
Thanks, Sean.
You're welcome.
Stu.
Sean, to circle back on Brian Allen for just a second, would Coleman be the next guy up there based on how Monday night went?
Yes, he would be.
And then what would that look like? I mean, would that also be the case for the starting combination overall with, I think it was Matt at left guard and O'Day at right guard? Or are you guys working through that?
I think we'll continue to work through it, but that's most likely what it looks like. Those guys, they've come in, they've gotten a bunch of experience in a short amount of time for guys that haven't been with us in training camp. But, those guys have done a great job battling and competing. And, those are the most likely combination of guys that we'll have for Denver.
And then just lastly for me, with Tyler Higbee finding the end zone last night, just what have you seen from him this season, and what was it like for him to have that opportunity?
Yeah, I think he's done a great job. He's been such an instrumental part of all the good things since, I've been fortunate enough to get here. And obviously his rookie year was 2016, but I've loved what he's developed into. I've loved the person that he is, the consistency at which he approaches the days. Similar to what I was saying about Bobby Wagner when you guys have asked over the last month or last handful of weeks, Higbee's kind of been one and the same. He's so steady, so consistent. He's battling through a lot of different things. I mean, you see, what a warrior this guy is, but Love Tyler Higbee. It was a great job. It was a good route. Nice job by Baker being able to kind of manipulate the coverage a little bit. And it was good to be able to get him in the end zone last night.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Greg.
Hey, Sean, how are you gonna approach these last 3 games with nothing to play for? Essentially, you're a guy who doesn't like to see his players take any hits that they don't need to take. You know, the way you approach the preseason, that kind of thing. How are you going to address who plays and who doesn't play and how much they play?
Yeah, everybody's got to play. I mean, if they're able to play, they're they've got to be able to play. We don't have the luxury, Greg, of being able to take a different approach just based on the amount of injuries that we have. So even though this is different than the preseason to me, if guys are healthy and able to go, then we're going to continue to try to do everything we can to go out there and pour everything into these guys and let them go compete to the best of their ability and see where the chips let the chips fall where they may. But we don't really have the luxury of being able to pick and choose who plays and who doesn't just based on the availability of the bodies we have.
So along those lines, are there chances that some guys could come off injury and play in these last 3 games, like the Jordan Fullers, not the Aaron Donalds? Obviously you don't know that, but the Jordan Fullers, those kind of people.
That's always a possibility. It's one of those deals that there's a lot of moving parts relative to amount of guys you can bring off IR. Sometimes it even gets into the financial stuff, but the answer is, nothing's off the table. But, as far as Jordan, we're just taking that a week to week.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Gary.
Hey, Sean.
Hey.
You with Matthew and Cooper, have kind of come out and said they're almost certainly wouldn't expect to see them back this season. What is the situation with Aaron? I mean, does he fall into that same category?
Yeah, both those guys wouldn't be cleared to play yet, and neither has Aaron been, and so that's kind of been, what we've remained true. Obviously, Aaron's not on IR, but we are taking it, a week at a time. And a lot of that entails, okay, what kind of progress is he making? Where is he at with that progress on the ankle? And then, how's he feeling? He's a guy similar to those other 2 you mentioned, Gary. They're always going to want to compete and want to be out there and play, but none of those guys have been medically cleared. Obviously, it's a little bit different because Cooper and Matthew are truly on IR, but Aaron hasn't been cleared yet.
And were you surprised at all?
You're on mute, Gary.
I was surprised at all was the last thing that I heard.
Sorry. Were you
Good.
surprised? Were you surprised at all with the way that Matt handled the end of that game in terms of, just running out the clock rather than not trying to score?
No, that's what we would have done too. I know people get into, the point differential and things like that, but when you can take a knee, I mean, that's actually a similar approach to what we took a handful of years ago with Todd, when he ended up getting a first down, went down. Now, whether or not Aaron was actually intentionally talking about Aaron Jones going down or not, but once they got the first down, they could run the clock out. And, that's the similar approach that we would have taken. So I would say no, but, I think it shows that, Matt's a class act, and we would have done the same thing if the roles were reversed.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
All right, we'll wrap up quickly with Gilbert and then Jordan.
Hey, Sean, maybe a little random question, but have you caught up with Kevin O'Connell, and what do you think he's doing in Minnesota? He's having a lot of successes here.
Oh yeah, it's been awesome. Yeah, I talked with Kevin, and him and Wes after their game the other day, and keep in touch with those guys regularly. So really been so happy for them. Those guys are close friends of mine, and to see the success. Even with Kirk Cousins, with my background with him, you're always happy to see people that you care about, go have success, and gives me a smile in spite of all the challenges that we've been through.
And I got one more for you, Sean. How about just watching Jared Goff from afar and what he's doing in Detroit?
He's done a great job. Really, he's played really good football. You can see he's playing with confidence. I think Ben Johnson has done an outstanding job of being able to kind of put them in some good spots, and then Jared ultimately brings it to life. But they've really played well offensively. Again, just being a fan of the game, I've really we've crossed over with them, and I think Jared's playing at a really high level, and he's done outstanding.
Thank you, Sean.
You're welcome.
Sean, I know that as the season goes on, even without the sort of catastrophic streak of injuries you guys have had, you'd be doing these analyses on sports science and health and those types of things. But in a season like this, when it is such a clear outlier, I'm wondering if you guys have discovered anything about the nature of the injuries that you've had, or discovered anything about like a big common denominator in why it's been such an outlier for you guys this year.
Yeah, Reggie and I have talked about that. I know he's done a lot of work behind the scenes, Jordan, for when we get through the season. In a lot of instances, just based on the nature of the amount of new players that we have to our systems, it's restricted our ability to even just go walk through where you need to say, all right, we need to get some actual repetitions so that they can feel like it, rather than the first time they're going is in a full speed setting in a game. So those are things that are kind of reserved for after the season, even though there is consistent ongoing dialogue. But there's a lot of things that could contribute to it. But, sometimes you chalk it up to unfortunate things happen. But whether it be the types of injuries, the main thing that you want to look into is the soft tissue and the accumulation of yardage, and how that relates to some of the injuries that we've suffered, and even just the quick turnaround, with the amount of, corrective surgeries that we had after the Super Bowl, and then how quickly you're starting up training camps. So all of those are things that we've kind of touched on briefly, but to say that we've really dove into it the way that you need to really be able to attach some, solution oriented, things as far as how you move forward, we haven't gotten to that yet.
Understand that, but in terms of a common denominator that keeps coming up, is that extended season last year, the off-season procedures that you guys had, and then the truncated off-season. Is that something that has kept coming up?
I think it's more about some of the contact issues. Those are the things that consistently come up that sometimes you can't necessarily attribute to anything other than a part of the game. But there's been so many. I mean, we'd have to talk about all of them individually, but the main ones that we want to try to look at are the soft tissues that have occurred a lot more frequently than what has been our history, and how we can do everything in our power to try to prevent those. Some of the, the injuries that occur just based on, the contact or what occurs within the game, I'm not sure that you can do a whole lot other than, hopefully avoid those types of collisions, during the course of the game or in practice.
Thanks, Sean.
Hey, Coach, Plaschke can't get on, so Gary's going to ask one question for him.
Okay.
Hey, Sean, Matt Skowronek, what kind of precipitated, I mean, I know you guys had a need, but what caught your eye about him, your decision to bring him in, and how has he performed, through this season?
Yeah, he's done a good job, Gary. It was, you look at who are the veteran linemen that have played in NFL games that are available based on just the amount of turnover we've had in that offensive line room. And he was a guy that he had tape out there. He's played center, he's played guard, had a lot of game experience, and he was available for us to be able to bring him in. And so in a short amount of time, he was playing a lot of snaps, but his toughness, his competitiveness, the willingness to push through. I mean, he's a guy that's been playing with a knee that bothers him pretty severely week in and week out, and the way that he's continued to compete has definitely been appreciated, and really have enjoyed being around Matt Skowronek.